Section 31 of the Endeavour Journal of Sir Joseph Banks, Journal from 25 August 1768 to 12 July 1771 by Joseph Banks. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Gail Timmerman Vaughan. Section 31. March 1770. 1770 March 1. Wind variable and weather sufficiently troublesome. 1770 March 2. More moderate, but a heavy swell from southwest made the ship very troublesome. 1770 March 3. More moderate, but southwest swell almost as high as ever, which gave great spirits to the No Continent party. 1770 March 4. Pleasant weather and fair wind, so that we ran in towards the land. In the morn 1 or 2 penguins were about us that swam as fast as the ship sailed, making a noise, something like the shrieking of a goose. They seemed to be like Diomedea demursa, but whether they were or not, I cannot be certain. In the evening ran along shore, but kept so far off that little could be seen. A large smoke was, however, which at night showed itself in an immense fire on the side of a hill, which we supposed to be set on fire by the natives. For though this is the only sign of people we have yet seen, I think it must be an indisputable proof that there are inhabitants, though probably very thinly scattered over the face of this very large country. 1770 March 5. Thick misty weather. The smoke of last night's fire still in sight. A point of land seen this morn, which inclined much to the westward, was supposed by the No Continents the end of the land. Towards even, however, it cleared up, and we continents had the pleasure to see more land to the southward. 1770 March 6. Very moderate and exceedingly clear. Land seen as far as south. So our unbelievers are almost inclined to think that continental measures will at last prevail. 1770 March 7. Almost calm, so we remained in the same place nearly all day, too far from the land to see anything of it, at least to depend upon our observations. 1770 March 8. Little wind and fair, which carried us to the southward far enough to ascertain that the appearance seen to the southward in the eve of the 6th was nothing but clouds, though from its fixed and steady appearance nobody at that time doubted in the least its being land. 1770 March 9. At the first dawn of day a ledge of rocks was discovered right to the leeward and very near to us, so we had much reason to be thankful that the wind in the night had been very gentle, otherwise we must in all human probability have ran right among them. At least we could have had no chance of escaping them but by hearing them, as there was no moon. The land appeared barren and seemed to end in a point, to which the hills gradually declined, much to the regret of us continent mongers, who could not help thinking this. A great swell from southwest and the broken ground without it, a pretty sure mark of some remarkable cape being here. By noon we were pretty near the land, which was uncommonly barren. The few flat places we saw seemingly produced little or nothing, and the rest was all bare rocks, which were amazingly full of large veins and patches of some mineral that shone as if it had been polished, or rather looked as if they were really paved with glass. What it was I could not at all guess, but it certainly was some mineral, and seemed to argue by its immense abundance a country abounding in minerals, where if anyone may judge from the corresponding latitudes of South America, in all human probability something very valuable might be found. 1770 March 10. Blew fresh all day, but carried us round the point to the total demolition of our aerial fabric called continent. 1770 March 11. Fresh gales still, and wind that will not us let get to the northward. We stood in with the shore, which proved very high, and had a most romantic appearance from the immense steepness of the hills, many of which were conical, and most had their heads covered with snow. On their sides and bottoms was, however, a good deal of wood, so much we could see, and no more, and the wind balking us would not let us stand nearer the shore than 2 leagues. 1770 March 12. Blew hard all day. Immense quantities of albatrosses and other seabirds were seen, which we had been without for some time. 1770 March 13. Wind fair, but still blew fresh, with very unsettled weather. In the evening we saw a harbour, stood in towards it, and found it to have all the appearances of a good one, but it was too late to stand near. The country about it was high inland, though not so much so as that seen on the 11th, as there was no snow on any part of it. Here were veins in the rocks, very large, filled with a whitish appearance, different from what we saw on the 9th. The sides of the hills appeared to be well wooded, and the country in general as fertile as in so hilly a country could be expected, but not the least signs of inhabitants. 1770, March 14. Stood along shore with a fair breeze, and passed 3 or 4 places that had much the appearance of harbours, much to my regret, who wished to examine the mineral appearances from which I had formed great hopes. The country rose immediately from the sea in steep hills, which however were tolerably covered with wood. Behind these were another ridge of hills covered in many places with snow, which from its pure whiteness and smoothness in the morn, and the many cracks and intervals that appeared among it at night, we conjectured to be newly fallen. 1770, March 15. Little wind in the morn. Towards even a brisk breeze. The country today appeared covered with steep hills, whose sides were but ill wooded, but on their tops was large quantities of snow, especially on the sides that looked towards the south. We imagined that about noon we passed by some considerable river, as the sea was almost covered with leaves, small twigs, and blades of grass. Many albatrosses about the ship today. We have not been absolutely without them since we came on this side of the land. 1770, March 16. Much snow on the ridges of the high hills. 2 were however seen, on which was little or none. Whatever the cause of it might be, I could not guess. They were quite bare of trees or any kind of vegetables, and seemed to consist of a mouldering soft stone of the colour of brick or light red ochre. About noon the country near the sea changed much for the better, appearing in broad valleys, clothed with prodigious fine woods, out of which came many fine streams of water. Notwithstanding the fineness of the country, there was not the smallest sign of inhabitants, nor indeed have we seen any since we made this land, except the fire on the 4th. 1770, March 17. Passed today by several large flats, which seemed low. The day in general was foggy, so that little could be seen. 1770, March 18. Immense quantities of snow on the hills new fallen, which by noon was plainly seen to begin to melt. The country near the shore was to appearance fertile and pleasant enough. 1770, March 19. Hazy weather and foul wind put us all out of spirits. 1770, March 20. Blew fresh all day with much rain and hazy weather. At night, however, wind came fair. 1770, March 21. Hazy. The land was wrapped in a cloak of fog all day, above which the tops of some hills appeared. At night saw a phenomenon which I have but seldom seen. At sunset the flying clouds were of almost all colours, among which was green very conspicuous, though rather faint coloured. 1770, March 22. Cloudy, misty, and calm all day. Once we were very near the shore, on which we saw that there was a most dreadful surf, occasioned by the south and southwest swell, which has rained without intermission ever since we have been upon this side of the land. 1770, March 23. Fine weather and light breezes. 1770, March 24. Just turned the westernmost point and stood into the mouth of the straits, intending to anchor in the first harbour we could find, when an easterly wind met us right in the teeth, to our no small dissatisfaction, as I believe there has been no other part of the time since we left Cape Turnagain. The first time when such a wind would have been disagreeable. 1770, March 25. Light breezes, but wind still at east. The sea is certainly an excellent school for patience. 1770, March 26. Light breezes and wind fair, to our no small comfort. After noon we saw a ripple near an island, which had something the appearance of breakers, but differed from them in the small waves breaking only without any swell or large ones. Our boat sounded upon it, but could get no ground. We supposed it to be the effect of a strong tide, such as we felt in the straits as we passed them. At night came to an anchor in a bay, in some part of which it is probable the Tasman anchored. 1770, March 27. Went ashore this morn. The country hilly, but not very high. Little or no flats were however to be seen. In the place where we watered were the remains of 2 or 3 Indian houses, which clearly had not been inhabited this year at least, but no signs that people had been here since that time. While Dr. Solander and self botanized, Tupaya and his boy caught almost a boatload of fish by angling in 2 or 3 fathom water. 1770, March 28. Rained and blew so hard all to-day that going ashore was scarce practicable, at least when we had so little hopes of success as our yesterday's search had given us, in which we found not one new plant. 1770, March 29. Rained and blew as hard as yesterday. Myself ill with sickness at stomach and most violent headache, a complaint which in some of our people has been succeeded by a fever. During the day many fish were taken in the ship, 90 out of the cabin windows alone. 1770, March 30. Myself quite recovered, except a little soreness at my stomach, occasioned, I suppose, by retching yesterday. The weather being fair, I resolved to climb some hill in hopes of meeting some plants in the upper regions, as none had been found in the lower. I did with great difficulty, walking for more than a mile in fern higher than my head. Success, however, answered my wishes, and I got 3 plants which we had not before seen. After coming down, I examined the stones which lay on the beach. They showed evident signs of mineral tendency, being full of veins, but I had not the fortune to discover any ore of metal, at least that I knew to be so, in them. As the place we lay in had no bare rocks in its neighbourhood, this was the only method I have of even conjecturing. 1770, March 31. Our route being settled in the manner above mentioned, we this morn weighed and sailed with a fair breeze of wind, inclined to fall in with Van Diemen's Land, as near as possible to the place where Tasman left it. End of section 31, March 1770.